Interact's workflow management solution is an addition to the standard workflow that already exists in many different modules. Basically, every single module of Interact has its own workflow setup that comes standard with the product. For example, a leave request can by default be sent to a supervisor, to the head of the organization unit, or to HR for approval. The same thing applies to the pay period timesheets. They can be sent to supervisors, department heads, and then wait for HR approval or employer approval. Similarly, there is a different workflow out of the box that comes with payroll. For example, here we've defined the payroll workflow to approve the final payroll, and it's been assigned to multiple people based on their role, and all of it is in a specific sequence. In our leave management system, you can even define different leave approval workflows based on the specific leave policy. These leave approvals can be role-based or job-based by a specific person. In this case, the annual leave request will automatically first be approved by the intermediate supervisor of the employer, then the head of the department, after which will be sent to a financial assistant for approval, and then to these specific employees. Other processes may require a different workflow. For that reason, Interact has a workflow engine that allows you to define your own workflow processes. Here we have an example of a position slot approval, which is one of many different workflow processes that can be defined in Interact out of the box. Here you'll notice many different workflows that are related to the normal payroll cycle. Other workflows are meant for recruiting or housing termination requests, for internal recruitment, or for job requisitions, and much more. If we look at the position slot approval, we notice that there are groups of users that have been defined, and we have assigned one of those groups, which is called the Position Slot Approval Group, to be used in the Position Slot Approval workflow. Here we have an example where the Position Slot Approval process has been set up to have a maximum time in queue of 1 hour and a half. And it's been assigned to Margaret. As a default user, she'll be the first one to be notified if things do not happen in time. Barbara will be notified next. So when we create a new position slot using our position slot screen, there's a position slot with number 127 that was created, but the approval button for this user is not active. The person who needs to approve this instead is Margaret. So when I log in as Margaret, I can access all my workflow activities, and this will allow me to approve those activities which are currently pending. Here's a position slot approval right at the top. You can find the detailed transitions which tell me exactly the specific position that I am approving here. It also asks me to respond to these two perimeters which we have added earlier as questions. This is very powerful because you can choose to add any number of quality indicators, questions, or parameters that require verification by the user during the workflow approval process. This way, you can add a checklist of items that need to be confirmed before an approval is given, and this enables you to simplify the approval process. There will be a clear record of all the answers provided by the person who approved a specific transaction. Once the questions are answered, Margaret can either approve the transaction, suspend it, or schedule it for later, or forward it to somebody else. If she's going to approve it, we will ask for her password one more time. Now that the approval has been processed, the normal workflow kicks in and the HR department can now go ahead and complete the process because the original position slot request has been approved by Margaret, who was set up for the first approval. We can see that the status has been changed to approved and the position is now active. In summary, the workflow routing can be defined for any specific process, and you can create and assign workflow-specific user groups. You can set any number of activities, and each workflow activity will have specific users that have been assigned to it. There may be a sequence of workflow steps, in which case you will have parent activities. parallel activities, and child activities. And finally, you can set up activity rules, which are perimeters or questions which need to be checked by the person who is actually approving or rejecting a workflow transaction. That's the power of 2Interact's workflow, which goes beyond the standard workflow that already exists in all the different modules of 2Interact.